A red apple, a coffin of glass, lips that remain crimson even in death. These are the images that linger in our minds when we think of Snow White. Beautiful, fragile, eternal. Yet, have you ever wondered why death in this story looks more radiant than life itself? Why a corpse is not buried beneath the soil, but displayed for all to see untouched, preserved sacred? This is not the logic of a fairy tale. This is the logic of ritual. Imagine a time long before books, before bedtime stories. A time when winter devoured the earth and the survival of your village depended on the return of spring. In that world, death was not an end. It was a passage, a key, a seed buried in darkness so that life might rise again. Now, picture a young girl chosen not for her sins, but for her beauty. Her pale skin, her raven hair, her lips like blood. She does not simply die, she is offered. The apple she bites is more than poison. It is a mark, a symbol of crossing. Her body is placed not in a grave, but in a coffin of crystal and glass, a shrine where the boundary between this world and the next remains transparent. Her beauty is not wasted, it is preserved because beauty itself was believed to lure the gods to awaken the cycle of rebirth. And here is the question we must ask. When the Brothers Grimm wrote of Snow White, were they recording a fairy tale? Or were they echoing an ancient ceremony of death and resurrection? A memory older than kingdoms, older than castles, whispered down through time until it became a children's story. So listen carefully. The apple, the glass coffin, the sleeping girl who does not decay. These are not the ornaments of fantasy. They are fragments of a ritual one that has survived disguised for 4,000 years. Once upon a time, but not the way you remember, there was a queen desperate for a child. She pricked her finger and 3 drops of blood fell upon the whiteness of snow. Blood, snow, and ebony wood, red, white, black. The colors of life, of death, of the underworld. And so a child was born, skin as pale as snow, lips as red as blood hair, as black as ebony. She was named Snow White, a name not of sweetness, but of omen. For a while, there was peace. But beauty in the old world was never safe. Beauty was a dangerous gift, one that attracted envy, desire, and the attention of gods and demons alike. The queen died, and a new woman came, the stepmother. But she was no ordinary villain. She was a priestess of vanity, consulting her mirror not for fashion, but for prophecy. The mirror was no trinket. It was an oracle, a voice from beyond the veil. And it whispered a curse Snow White would eclipse her. 3 times the stepmother came to kill. Not once, but 3, the sacred number of sacrifice. The bodice laces tightened until breath failed. The poisoned comb sank into her hair like a ritual thorn. And finally, the apple red, gleaming, forbidden. She took the bite, and death claimed her. Yet her death was strange. She did not rot. Her skin remained white, her lips red, her hair black. She looked not like a corpse, but like a relic. And so the dwarfs did not bury her. They placed her in a coffin of glass, and the village came to look. Think of that image, a body preserved, displayed, worshipped. Was this truly a funeral, or was it a shrine? The tale we are told today softens the edges. A kiss of true love, a miracle of romance. But the older story was far darker. The prince did not kiss her awake. He demanded her body to keep it to take it away. His servants carried the coffin, and as they stumbled, the coffin shook. The piece of poisoned apple lodged in her throat was dislodged. She gasped. She lived again not by love, but by violence, by accident. That is the truth, hidden beneath the lace and sweetness. Snow White's resurrection was never romantic. It was brutal, clumsy, strange. And what does that tell us? That in the shadow of the fairy tale lies something older. The story is not about a girl who slept until she was kissed. It is about a ritual death, a preserved body, a return from the other side. 3 attempts to kill, 3 colors, 3 signs of sacrifice, and a coffin of glass where death became spectacle. So ask yourself, Does this sound like a children's story? Or the echo of an ancient rite retold and disguised until its blood was forgotten? It is not just a German tale. The mirror, the apple, the coffin, these are only one mask, one face of something much older. Across the world, the same story appears. Again and again, the girl dies. Again and again, she returns. In Greece, they told of Persephone, a maiden of spring stolen by the lord of the underworld. She ate the seed of the pomegranate red as blood and was bound to the realm of death. Yet she returned each year when the earth thawed and the flowers rose. Her story was not about romance, but about cycles, life descending into death and death blooming back into life. Persephone's fruit was a pomegranate. Snow White's was an apple. The symbol is the same, the bite that seals the passage between worlds. In Japan, old folktales whisper of maidens locked in wooden chests, sealed away not to die but to wait. Their bodies preserved untouched, suspended between the worlds of the living and the dead. Snow White's coffin of glass echoes these same shrines, containers of transition, vessels of liminality. Among the Celts, there were the sleeping maidens. Buried in caves or laid beneath hills, they slumbered for centuries, neither rotting nor gone. The people believed that one day when the world was ready, they would awaken. Snow White, laid out for all to see, is one of these maidens, neither corpse nor living, but something sacred waiting. And it does not end there. In the frozen mountains of the Andes, archaeologists uncovered the maiden of Ullalalaco, a child sacrificed to the gods, her body preserved by cold, lips still red, skin still pale, eyes closed as though she merely slept. 400 years passed, and still she looks like a girl in slumber. Can you see the shadow? This is Snow White, but in flesh and earth, in history, the motif repeats. A girl, young, beautiful, chosen. A fruit, a bite of death. A body preserved. A return. Was this only coincidence? Could so many cultures separated by oceans invent the same tale? Or is it memory? Memory, older than borders, older than language, older than storybooks. The Brothers Grimm did not create Snow White. They inherited her. They gave a new dress to an ancient ghost, clothed her in lace and velvet so that children might listen without fear. But the bones beneath the dress are far older, and so the question becomes unavoidable when we see Snow White lying in her glass coffin. Are we looking at a fairy tale, or at the echo of an ancient ritual remembered across the world?
Oh my goodness.
Why does the same pattern appear again and again?
Can you believe
Why do
this?
maidens die and yet remain
She is
untouched,
so well
awaiting
preserved.
return? Folklore alone cannot explain it. Archaeology must answer. Beneath the soil of Europe, the earth has kept its own memory. In alpine valleys, researchers uncovered burial sites of young girls, their bodies carefully placed in wooden boxes, sometimes lined with shards of glass or crystal. These were not the crude burials of peasants. These were crafted shrines. Their faces painted, their hair arranged, their lips tinted red, as though death was not allowed to look like death. In the mountains of Italy, a skeleton was found with fragments of polished obsidian surrounding the head. A dark mirror, a black oracle buried with the maiden. Was this the stepmother's mirror, transfigured into myth? A ritual tool of prophecy, misunderstood by later generations as a toy of vanity. Travel west, and we meet the Andean maiden frozen in time upon Lulayaco's peak. 400 years in the ice, yet her cheeks still round, her lips still crimson. She looks as if she only sleeps. To her people, she was not a victim. She was a messenger offered so that the mountain gods might bring rain and harvest. Snow White's apple is the same as her coca leaves, the mouthful that binds the body to the other world. Even in Scandinavia, we find echoes. Bog bodies, girls lowered into the marsh, their skin preserved by the earth's chemistry, their hair still braided. Not buried, not burned, preserved, displayed, offerings to forces unseen. The same unbroken beauty in death, the same silence that demanded reverence. Science tells us this preservation is never accident. When cultures keep bodies intact, it is because those bodies were sacred. To be preserved was to become a vessel, a bridge between the living and the divine. And what of the apple historians remind us that apples were more than food? In Northern Europe, they were symbols of eternal youth. Buried in graves, placed in hands, apples were a gift to the dead, ensuring they might awaken beyond the veil. A bite was not just nourishment, it was passage. The coffin of glass, too, is not fantasy. In Central Europe, archaeologists discovered burials where bodies were sealed in stone-lined chambers with transparent quartz crystals. Light passed through, illuminating the dead. The body became a lantern glowing with the boundary between life and death.
It's incredible.
Glass was not decoration. It was the medium of resurrection. So, when we look at Snow White, what do we see? A sweet maiden preserved for a prince, or the cultural fossil of a rite practiced across continents across millennia? The tale softens, it dwarfs. Weep, a prince arrives, love wins. But archaeology strips away the sugar and shows us what remains: a body chosen, preserved, displayed, a people waiting for it to awaken. It is no wonder the Grimm brothers stumbled upon the story and preserved it in ink. But they did not invent it. They could not. The bones were already there, buried deep beneath villages, beneath mountains, beneath the world itself. And so the science and the myth converge. Preservation, display, resurrection. Snow White is not fantasy. She is evidence, a relic of the death rituals our ancestors dared to perform, and our children now dare to dream. Folklore preserves the story. Archaeology preserves the body. But symbolism preserves the soul. Every detail of Snow White is a cipher, a code carved from the oldest rituals of humanity, the apple. It gleams red, perfect, forbidden. To a child, it is simply poison. But to ancient eyes, the apple was more. In the north, apples were placed in graves, gifts of eternal youth. In Greece, they were the fruit of Aphrodite, tokens of desire. In the Christian world, the apple became sin, the bite that bound mankind to death.
The maiden's body.
One fruit, many faces, but always the same, a passage. To bite it was to cross a threshold, to move from innocence to knowing, from life into death. Snow White's apple is not a snack. It is the Eucharist of death. The glass coffin. Why glass? Why transparency? In ritual, the body of the chosen was not hidden. It was displayed, a shrine, a spectacle, a reminder. In crystal coffins, quartz chambers, obsidian mirrors, the dead were not gone, but waiting. Glass is the material of liminality. You can see through it, but not touch. The maiden lies before your eyes, but beyond your reach. Alive, yet untouchable. Dead, yet not departed. The glass coffin is a doorway holding her in suspension between two worlds. The mirror. In modern retellings, it is only vanity, but ancient mirrors were instruments of magic, polished bronze or obsidian used in divination. They were oracles. The stepmother's mirror does not flatter, it judges. It declares fate. It is the ritual voice of the unseen, choosing who must live and who must be offered. When she asks, "Who is the fairest of them all?" she is not preening. She is consulting the oracle, testing the gods, begging for her power to remain. The colors. Red, white, black, bloodbone, and shadow. In Europe's oldest myths, these were the three colors of the sacred feminine. White for birth, red for life and fertility, black for death and the underworld. Snow White's very body is painted in this palette. Her name itself is a ritual, a recitation of the life cycle etched in flesh. She is not simply a girl, she is a symbol of existence itself. The number 3. 3 attempts to kill her. 3 signs of the body. 3 colors. 3 drops of blood on snow. In ritual, 3 is the cycle, beginning, middle, end. Birth, death, rebirth. Snow White is not killed once she must endure the triad. Only then is she ready for resurrection. Put them together, and the tale ceases to be innocent. Apple coffin, mirror, colors, triad. It is a liturgy, a coded prayer. Each symbol carries the memory of sacrifice and the promise of return. And so we see the truth. Snow White is not a story to entertain. She is a ritual, preserved in narrative form, disguised as myth, softened as bedtime. But when we trace the symbols, the disguise falls away. What remains is the raw, ancient script, the language of death and rebirth. Why does this story cling to us? Why does a tale of death, a poisoned apple, and a preserved body survive for centuries across cultures, across tongues? Because Snow White is not simply a maiden, she is a reflection of us. Humans have always feared the same thing: the silence of death, the rotting of the body, the vanishing of beauty. To preserve what dies, to make it eternal, is to rebel against the void. That rebellion is at the heart of Snow White. The coffin of glass is not merely a resting place. It is a human dream to hold on to what we love, to keep beauty unspoiled, to freeze time itself. Every culture has tried. Egyptians embalmed their queens. Andean priests offered children to the mountains. Europeans painted corpses with rouge so their cheeks would glow in the grave. We cannot bear the fading. We demand beauty even in death. And so Snow White becomes more than a girl. She becomes a philosophy that beauty is divine, and if preserved, it can summon life back from death. Her body is not her own. It is a vessel for the community's hope, a shrine where villagers project their dread and their desire. She sleeps not because of love, but because humanity cannot accept that beauty must decay. But there is a darker layer. Why a young girl? Why always innocence? Purity, untouched flesh. Because innocence has always been the most prized sacrifice. The ancients believed that the gods would listen only to the pure, that the untouched body had more power to cross the veil. And so the girl is chosen. She becomes the seed buried in the earth, her sleep the winter, her awakening the spring. Do we not still carry this? Look at our obsessions: eternal youth, skin without blemish, lips painted red against pale skin. Fashion mirrors the same ritual palette. Cosmetics echo the ancient paint of burial rites. We chase immortality not with rituals now, but with medicine, surgery, preservation. We have not abandoned the coffin of glass. We have only modernized it. And so the philosophy sharpens into something painful. Snow White is not a story about love conquering death. It is a story about how we as humans refuse to let go. How we would rather mythologize a corpse than accept its silence. How we transform death into spectacle, into beauty, so we can endure what terrifies us most. Perhaps that is the true meaning of the fairest of them all. Not who is most beautiful in life, but whose beauty can withstand death. Snow White wins not because she lives, but because even in death she is adored. Her perfection is preserved. She defeats decay. And in that defiance, she becomes myth. So we must ask, is Snow White truly about a girl, or is she about us? Our fear of endings, our hunger for beauty, our obsession with resurrection. The tale whispers back death was never the end. It was transformation. Destruction was a prelude to rebirth. To preserve beauty was to plant the seed of life. This is not romance. This is ritual philosophy. A reminder that in the eyes of our ancestors, the path to survival was paved with blood glass and the silence of a sleeping girl. Snow White was never a fairy tale. She was a ritual. A girl chosen, poisoned, preserved. A body that refused to decay. A beauty that outlived death itself. But if this tale hides a 4,000-year-old death rite, what else is buried beneath the stories we think we know? Consider Sleeping Beauty. Another girl. Another sleep without end. Not in glass, but in a tower, a coffin of stone. For 100 years she lies untouched, her beauty preserved. Is this romance? Or is it the same ritual in disguise? The same corpse waiting for resurrection softened into lullaby? Or what of Little Red Riding Hood, a maiden devoured by the beast, swallowed whole only to emerge alive? Is this not also death and rebirth clothed in the skin of a predator? And then there is Snow White's coffin itself, a transparent boundary between life and death. How many other coffins lie hidden beneath fairy tales? Their glass shattered, their meanings forgotten. We tell ourselves these are stories for children. But children's stories do not speak of poisoned fruit preserved bodies or maidens who return from the grave. These are echoes, fragments of ancient rites whispered across centuries, reshaped until we no longer recognize the blood beneath the lace. So listen carefully. If Snow White carries the memory of a ritual older than kingdoms, older than castles, older than the Brothers Grimm, What secrets are waiting in the other tales? Perhaps Sleeping Beauty's slumber is not a spell of love, but the silence of the coffin. Perhaps the glass coffin was never meant to be opened. And perhaps, just perhaps, the dead have never stopped whispering to us through the mouths of fairy tales. The story ends here, but the next one has already begun.